So that means it will be live in YouTube and on the Facebook page. But Sue will now put it. What's that, Sue?
It's going slow, but there's lots of those.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
But she'll now
This
just put it
reminds me of
into.
It is going. There we are.
We done?
Right.
Okay. Evening, Sandra.
Very complicated.
I'm just going to.
It is a bit complicated. So we're live.
Yes.
Good evening,
Rebecca. Good evening.
Excellent. So we're going. So, welcome everybody on Facebook and YouTube, for another couch time. And this week we're super lucky to have Jen and Heidi, who, amongst lots of other things, are part of the PHC, which is Public Health Collaboration. And the ladies are going to talk to us tonight about lots of work they're doing and how we can help them as well with some projects. But if you have any questions, please ask them, and we'll do sort of a Q&A session after as well. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for coming. And please introduce yourself. Tell us about yourselves.
Thanks for the invite. You know we love Keto Fitness Club. Right, yeah, I'll go ahead. Okay, so I'm Dr. Jen Unwin. I'm a clinical psychologist by background. I'm also recovering sugar addict, food addict. And for the last, I'd say, maybe 4 years now, that's what I've been most interested in. So some of you all know that 10 years ago, the other Dr. Unwin and I started working with patients with diabetes in his practice. And so I was kind of his sidekick for that. And that's still ongoing. But now I'm Heidi's sidekick, and we love working together on all things to do with sugar and food addiction. So many things going on. Some we'll talk a bit more about. So we're both involved in the public health collaboration. I'm one of the scientific advisors, and always
sounds very posh, Jen.
It sounds really posh, doesn't it? They just wanted someone that I think wasn't a doctor, and so I was a likely candidate as a psychologist. The conference this year is going to be absolutely amazing. The Public Health Collaboration Conference is getting bigger and better every year, and it's always loads of fun. And it's in Sheffield this year. I can tell you the dates if I look at my calendar. May the 19th and 20th, and got some amazing international speakers this year as well that some of you guys will have heard of. Georgia Eade's going to be there, and she specializes in basically keto for mental health. She's an amazing speaker. Ben Bickman, who's absolutely the guy if you want to know about insulin and hyperinsulinemia and all of the problems that can cause and what to do about it. Again, fabulous speaker. There's rumors that Sean Baker's coming, for those of you that are like on the carnivore side of things. Yes, Dan. And of course Dr. Unwin and various other people. So that's going to be fun. Heidi and I have been running. So we did some training with Bitten Johnson, who's the sort of acknowledged wizard clinician for food addiction. And then we wanted to set up something here. So we've been running groups online on Zoom, and we did it for sort of an audit research project. But then we've also been running intensive weekends, which basically go from a Friday lunchtime to a Sunday night, where we try and impart everything we know to you, but with sort of like 6-month follow-up. And quite a number of people from Keto Fitness Club have done that. And
I was going to say a few of our members have done that with you.
And it's fantastic to see them there, because they're always so knowledgeable already about a lot of the things that we're talking about. So that's really good. And we have got another one coming up pretty soon, the 3rd to the 5th of March, again in the Lake District, although it is a different venue, but it is lovely. And I think we've got 2, possibly 3 places left. So if after we've spoken, anyone's interested in finding out more, they can they can ask us and we can let them know. And we're also trying to move forward with things like kind of campaigning for having food addiction recognised as a legitimate condition, because amazingly it isn't, and because it isn't, there isn't much research on it, and also there aren't really services for people. So in the meantime, while we're campaigning, we're hoping to set up more and more stuff within the PHC to help people who recognise that they have this struggle and this condition. So yeah, there's lots to be done, and if anyone wants to join the merry fight, they're very welcome. But at risk of blathering on for the whole hour, I'm going to hand over to Heidi.
Thank you, Jen. Heidi, tell us about yourself.
Yes, I'll introduce myself. I think I'm going to start by claiming that sidekick role, Jen, actually. But yes,
we're joint sidekicks. We're kind of ninja sidekickers.
Yeah, kicking to both sides. So yes, my name is Heidi Evert. I have the honor of that name because I happen to come from Norway. So that name's from my father. I'm originally a chemical engineer, actually. That's my degree, and that gives me a very keen interest in the biochemical side of everything that we do. But I came across or met Jen and David and a lot of you other lovely people through the public health collaboration and contacts via a number of years ago, after I had my own health challenges that had led me into the field of nutrition. So I retrained in nutrition and then started looking looking to understand a bit more about metabolic health, and found my way via the US, actually, to what was going on in the UK with the public health collaboration. Spend quite a lot of time working with diabetes programs, particularly the Expert Diabetes Health Program run by Expert Health, Dr. Trudy Deakin's program, which is very, very very well thought of and very successful in the area of putting diabetes into remission. But then I am myself also a food addict. I didn't know that food addiction existed, and many people, as Jen has just said, food addiction is not something that is recognized by either the WHO's International Classification of Disease nor the DSM in the US. So when Jen and I then trained together, when we finished training together after she had introduced me to that idea that I wasn't alone in the world with troubles with food controlling me, then we decided to do some work in that area to try and build awareness. And of course, that Jen's already outlined quite a lot of what we do. I'm going to just maybe add my encouragement to anybody who's listening and who's interested. Do get in touch. I mean, the programs we set up, this food addiction recovery subcommittee within the PHC, specifically to build awareness and do the stuff we're doing with the lobbying and trying to build awareness in the medical communities, but also to try and come up with resources and recovery programs that are actually practical and usable, are going to help real people with this problem that we so identify with ourselves. So we are, or the programs that we are working on are, it's a case of watch this space a little bit, isn't it, in the PHC, where we've got a lot of irons in the fire, and we're hoping that maybe via you lovely people in Keto Fitness Club, we can actually share that as we develop them, so that your listeners and followers can be right at the front end of knowing what's available to them. The other thing that maybe just to add to what you were saying, and then I will shut up and let people ask questions, is that if there are any health professionals listening, or anybody who works within or works with their own GP or nurses, and know people that are interested in the kind of simple diagnostic tools and basic understanding of how to identify food addiction, then Jen and I have also done quite a bit of work in that area, to relate the symptoms of addiction specifically as they are recognized for other addictions such as alcohol and drug addictions, etc., relate them specifically to food. And so if anybody's interested in knowing any more about that, we do information sessions and provide that tool for anybody who wants to use it. It's called Craved, and we can go into more detail about that if anybody's interested in that too.
I was actually thinking, if people are interested, we could run through it. It's only kind of 6 areas, 6 questions. So if people are interested, we could kind of do the screen. And remember, it is only a screen; it's not a diagnosis, but it might give people an indication. If it kind of really applies to them, then you might think more about maybe doing the weekend, or looking at there are some pages on the Public Health Collaboration website where you can find out some more general information about food addiction as well.
I think that sounds really, really interesting. And maybe what we could do, maybe we could invite you to one of our other members' sessions, and maybe you could talk about that then. That would be absolutely brilliant. It was interesting you were saying about if anybody sort of knows any doctors or is in the profession. So I had my annual diabetes checkup this week, and I've been in remission for a couple of years now. But the diabetes nurse, the diabetes nurse was really, really interested in the keto, low carb, low sugar, health living, really. So I've given her a lot, and I mentioned PHC and everything. So I think it is slowly getting out there, isn't it? And people are realizing that it's not what it has been in the past, and there's different ways forward. So
absolutely, for sure. I really feel, compared to, even 3 years ago, people are talking about it much more. When we 10 years ago, when we did the low carb group in David's practice, he was booed at conferences. The dietitian walked out of the practice, never came back. We were told we were killing people. It was going to be dangerous. Really, that was unbelievable, the reaction that we got when people heard what we were doing. And now there are, tens, possibly hundreds of GPs who know about the work. Some are doing it more than others, but people aren't saying it's dangerous, and there's no evidence for it, because the evidence has been building, and just David's outcomes alone, not just for diabetes but for all the other health markers that go along with it, I think and internationally it's the tide is definitely turning, and hopefully more and more people will get a positive response from their healthcare team when they they ask about it, or they say that they're doing this. It's not everywhere yet, but it's definitely a long way along from where it was.
Definitely. There's one of your projects that I'm very interested in. So my daughter Jen, I know you've met Rosie, but my daughter, she's now 15, and she's one of our junior ambassadors for Keto Fitness Club. However, she still does quite like her sugar, and she's cut down. Don't get me wrong, she's cut down loads. But I know that you are working on a project about, is it about families or about the whole family being into do it? Do you want to talk about that? Talking to families,
Tracy's Heidi's project, and kind of amusingly, it's called CFK. So
that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, so it's called CFK, Collaboration for Kids, as a much needed antidote to KFC. Now, that, of course, that is not you, KFC. So we'll drop that bit for now, and just really focus on the Collaboration for Kids. But yes, so Jen, yes, you kindly say it's my project. It's so Jen is one of our advisors. Very much appreciated to have a clinical health psychologist with us on this. But yes, it is basically based on both areas that both Jen and I work in. So both our learnings from the world of diabetes and the work we do with a primary focus of putting diabetes into remission, helping people with that process, but also our food addiction work, because what we see is that generally we are seeing a lot of mature adults in both those fields, and facing the point from them week in, week out, if only I had known sooner. And so the obvious, the no-brainer is, folks, we need to actually address this at a much, much younger age. So Collaboration for Kids is a voluntary, it's a big project within the PHC. We've got more than 70 volunteers already, but we need all the resources we can get, and we're trying to basically work in lots of different spaces. So in parent and toddler groups, in primary schools, in secondary schools, in dental surgeries, in primary care, in food retail. We're trying to meet children and families in all these areas and build awareness and try to get to find ways to help them to want to change behavior from eating processed foods, primarily processed foods, which are what we all know as these hyper palatable and very addictive ultra processed foods, and start eating more real and natural foods the way nature intended us to eat.
I'm being a bit selfish here. I'm a manager in a college, so further education. So I think that would be a really good place to come as well. So you're more than welcome to come to my college, but talking to teenagers, I think that's really sort of a good shout as well.
Fantastic, love to. And we're interested, very interested in involving teenagers as well. So one of the schools, school groups we're working with in Doncaster, their students are actually getting involved and trying to help us to understand how we have to deliver messages that are going to mean something to them. In what way are we going to do it? What kind of communication methods? What is it that they listen to and are interested in? They're not going to listen to people like me, but they are maybe going to listen to each other. They may be going to listen to some of the sort of people that hold the ground in whatever social media they are working with. In TikTok, in sports personalities, whatever. So yes, very keen, very interested. And anybody who's listening and would like to know more, what should they do? Should they contact you and then you contact me, or how should we do that?
Sue, what do you reckon would be a best? If people, we will do a post in our groups to saying this is how you can contact yourselves. But if people do want to contact us as well, we can then pass on the details.
All right.
So that'd be brilliant. I think we did have a question there, didn't we, from Sarah?
Brilliant question. And what an amazing surname you have, Sarah.
It is.
Yeah. How do you know if you have food addiction? So we could quickly just go through the screen and to give you some ideas. But it in a nutshell, it's do you find it really hard to stay stopped? So presumably in Keto Fitness Club, you're all trying not to have sugar and carbohydrate. That would seem to be the defining thing. But is anybody listening find it really hard to stay stopped with the sugar and the sweet stuff? And does it require mental health help or counselling? So I can kind of answer the second bit first, and then we'll go through the screening questions. So if we take, so our position is that sugar and carbohydrates and ultra processed foods could be addictive. And of course, if we take an addiction model, then we should probably see what we can learn from other addictions like alcohol and drugs and nicotine. etc. And of course, the first thing that you learn there is that the key is that you can't moderate that substance. You've lost control of your relationship with it. So you always want another cigarette, or you always want another drink, or another, or 10 more drinks, or whatever it is. And if someone says to you, well, why can't you just sort of have it in moderation? It makes no sense. You wouldn't say that to an alcoholic. Why don't you just have a small whiskey on a Friday night and keep it at that? Because we all know they've lost control of that, the ability to do that. So if we transfer that, what our belief, and the evidence is there, we believe for that being the same for some people, probably about 20% of adults, and it's on a bit of a spectrum. So some people are more severely affected than others. But for those of us who are reasonably severely affected, we can't just have one toffee, we can't have a small piece of cake, we can't have one biscuit out of a packet. It's just not possible. We've lost control of that relationship, and it's not our fault. Our brains have been hijacked by those foods, and this is what we explain when we do our weekends, or we do the courses. So the basis of treatment for someone with drug and alcohol problem is abstinence. So the basis of the treatment for sugar and carb and processed food addiction, of course, also has to be abstinence. The difficulty is, of course, that you don't have to drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or inject heroin, but you do have to eat. So the trick is finding one's own personal abstinent food plan, and it's pretty unique. So but if I look into my heart very deeply, I know the foods that I've lost control of, and those are the foods that I need to abstain from. I haven't lost control over my relationship with steak. I can eat quite a lot of steak, but I haven't,
I bet you can't eat as much as Dan, Jen.
Yeah, probably not as much as Dan, and there is a limit. There's a limit to how much of that I can eat. Like, that doesn't sort of light my brain up like a pinball machine, like it does if I was to eat some Ben and Jerry's fish food or whatever it is. Was that? Oh no, it's Häagen-Dazs, is it? I can't remember which one had. Anyway, let's not talk about that too much. So yeah, so that's the idea really, is that because we're looking at it through an addiction lens, of course, the treatment has to be abstinence. So when you say, does the person need mental health treatment, what we usually say is that the bedrock of treatment is getting that abstinence, and that's what we really focus on, with lots of sort of psychological tricks and tips and advice about how to do that. Some people, obviously, there's a component whereby the reason that some of us have got in that position with food is that we're eating as a sort of form of self-medication. We either eat because we're stressed or upset, or we don't want to think about something, and sometimes that can be linked to either your current circumstances or some sort of past history of some trauma or difficulties. So it's very unique. Some people may need some counselling or support with that in addition to the abstinence. But what we find is that lots of people who manage to achieve abstinence from their drug foods, their mental health improves so radically, they then think, well, I don't need any mental health help now. And in fact, that was what we saw in our results from the bigger study that we did, was that people's mental well-being really improved significantly when they managed to achieve abstinence, and the symptoms of the food addiction went away. Now, that doesn't mean that it's cured. It's a bit like type 2 diabetes. If you go back to eating as you did before, the type 2 diabetes is going to come back, and it's exactly the same with the cravings and the symptoms of food addiction. If you go back to eating your drug foods, the symptoms will all come back, the cravings and the overeating and so on. So yeah, so right.
So how do sweeteners work with that? So obviously we have a bit of our sweet products, but they are sweetener based.
Yes. So for people with food addiction, sweeteners can be reasonably problematic, but I suppose what we like to say is that it's a little bit like if you're coming off heroin, you might have some methadone because it's the lesser of two evils, and then you try and come off the methadone. So for this isn't for everybody. We're now talking about people who have got food addiction. Some people can manage sweeteners and they're fine and they don't get cravings, and they can kind of get themselves in a steady state. For other people, the sweeteners keep that addiction problem going, because they taste sweet, so they still light up the reward center, which is the problem with addiction. You're kind of tickling your dopamine centers, and that leads on to cravings. Sorry, Heidi, go ahead. I think I'm taking over. Go on.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, we think exactly the same about this, and we see it time and time again. But yeah, so that's one of the areas, and it that's a problem, and they maintain that taste that we have for very sweet things. So that's so it's so much easier once you're maintaining that sweetness in your food environment to go back to the foods that you're trying to avoid. So so it's also that habit that maintenance of the taste that's the problem. So I think where you were going, Jen, was that we do recognize it as a possible step on the way, and especially in a case like with people who are diabetic and who are trying to cut out the sugars instantly. But ultimately, if you take that approach of trying to cut down on the sweetness, using sweetness, then ultimately you're heading in the same direction for trying to change your taste, which in the end is going to mean abstinence, because you don't want them anymore. You don't like that taste anymore. So it is a tricky one. It's a tricky one, and people are different. And I think that is the issue. When you start working with your own symptoms of food addiction and your own recognizing what Jen was just saying there about what are really truly the foods that I know deep inside me that I can't control. When I have one, one is never going to be enough. It's always, and even 1,000 is not going to be enough. I'll just keep going. Once you get to that, you have to work with your own. You have to make it work for you. So it's very much personalizing an approach to getting to that abstinence.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we offer with the weekend, because we get you started, but then you get 6 months sort of follow up as well. So we don't just abandon you, because this is a lifelong problem. So we need to go back and just do the 6 criteria for Sarah, and then Sheila, my heart's absolutely going out to you. I completely know what you mean, fighting that battle every morning, and by the evening watching your hand, this sort of disembodied hand I used to watch going into the biscuit barrel and thinking, I don't even want to be doing this, and yet I seem to have, it's like an alien's taken over my body, and I'm eating this sweet stuff. So she says how to hit it on the head. So we'll come on to you in a minute, Sheila. Don't go away. Okay, so if we go for the 6 criteria, and this is taken from the World Health Organization criteria for substance use, and we've just, as Heidi said, sort of substituted it with food. So craved stands for, obviously, C is cravings, and also a compulsion to eat those foods. So like Sheila's saying, they're in the house and you're thinking about them, and you've got this compulsion, and it's going round and round in your head, and you think about it so much, in the end you just kind of cave in and you have it, almost to sort of cope with the cravings in your head, if you like. So C is for the cravings and the irresistible compulsion to eat these for your particular drug foods. Should we take them in turn?
Sorry to interrupt you, but I was just thinking that people might want to write down 1 to 6 as we go through CRAVED. So these are 6 different criteria, and then you can then say, does this sound like me? Is this me? Do I experience that? Yes or no? And then you're doing your own sort of analysis. Am I likely to be experiencing food addiction?
And if you're very clean keto now, it may be that you don't have these symptoms now, but what you can do is think back in the day. Have I ever had a compulsion that was so irresistible that I couldn't resist it, kind of thing? So as I say, maybe that you want to think about yourself now. It might be not so many, but back in the day may have been. Or if you're still battling like Sheila, maybe you're going to get slightly more points. I would have had 6 out of 6 back in the day, I tell you. Should we take them in turns, Heidi, or do you want me to just go?
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. So I'll take the R then. So with on the second criteria, which is R, which stands for reaching for more. So that's that sense that actually the more I have, the more I need. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but maybe years ago it would be enough to have one biscuit, and we were all very well brought up little children, and we would have one biscuit if we were given one biscuit. But then by the time you get to your teens, you're having the whole packet, and then you've actually bought 3 packets for the price of one, and then on it goes. And so that is a sense also, as Jen was saying, exactly the same as other addictions, that your tolerance levels are increasing. Does that relate to you? Can you relate to that? That's another sign of potentially addiction to those kind of foods. So yours next, Jen?
I've got A then. And A is for it sort of stands for activities it sort of ignored or withdrawn from. So as time goes on, have you noticed yourself doing less of the things that you previously did, maybe hobbies or exercise or going out with friends, or is it even starting to affect like your work and family relationships? So is it that over time the obsession with the food has grown and other activities have kind of shrunk to make place for the food and the food thoughts and the food behaviors and the recovering from feeling rubbish because you've eaten too much and feeling bad about either your eating behavior or how your clothes fit or whatever it is? So A is for activities that have sort of shrunk down.
Yeah. And then the V in craved stands for volume, and that is, so it's similar in some sense to the tolerance, but the tolerance bit that I just described is to do with to get that dopamine hit that Jen was talking about earlier, that you need more to actually get that sense of feeling good or satisfied or whatever, which ultimately turns to pain in the end. But the V is for having more volume than you intended. So that intending, I'm only going to have one of these, and then literally not managing to stop. Just cannot stop. You've made a decision to have no more, and yet you can't stop yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And E, we're getting there now. E is for exclusion, because we couldn't find a better word, but really this is to do with withdrawal symptoms. So if you ever try and exclude these things from your diet, you say, right, I'm stopping on Monday. Do you experience withdrawal symptoms when you try and exclude those substances, or have you experienced that in the past? So that can be several things, but it's often things like headaches, irritability, shakiness, gastrointestinal symptoms, anxiety feelings, or low mood. So there can be sort of very physical symptom, weakness. There can be very physical symptoms. Headaches are a very common one. Or they can be sort of psychosomatic, like irritability and anxiety and so on. So have you ever experienced, or when you try and cut down, do you experience any withdrawal symptoms? A couple of withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah. And then the last one is, gosh, can I relate to that? It's a D for damage despite, and it's that sense of that we will continue doing it, continue eating these foods despite knowing they're doing us damage. And that's that feeling that, we know this is not, continuing eating chocolates and cake instead of having a proper dinner. It's not going to do me any good. Maybe I've had a diagnosis of diabetes. Maybe I'm struggling with my weight. And I know it's because of this, and yet I still continue. So that's That's the last one. Damage, continuing to eat despite knowing that these are causing us damage. These foods.
Damage, and it can be mental health harms as well. So often people know that their mood is actually being made worse by this behaviour, but they still can't stop. So that's the 6. And I don't know if anybody's willing to confess in the in the chat, but so 3 or more is an indication of some possible problem. As we say, this isn't a diagnosis, guys. It's just like an indication that there might be something you want to think about more.
And it's specifically related to, if these are the criteria that I used for a diagnosis of possible alcohol or drug addiction. So we've literally just applied them to food. So, but of course, because food addiction is not considered a disease, it's not a diagnosis.
So if people have done that and said, I have got 3 or more, what next? What's their next step?
Well, probably well, all 6 were definitely for me 5 years or so ago. Well done, Rebecca, for getting somewhere different. Yeah. So, I mean, there's various options, really. I mean, one is obviously to come and do our amazing weekend, all profits to the Public Health Collaboration. We're not making any money out of it, and Heidi and I give all our time for free. None of this is commercial from our point of view. So come and do the weekend. We're hoping to be launching online courses at the PHC. You can read my book, All Profits to the PHC. I haven't got it. I normally have a copy hanging around somewhere. Fork in the Road. You can get it on Amazon. So if you just look on Fork in the Road on Amazon, Jen Unwin, then that's got a lot of information in that we're talking about, and it'll give you somewhere to start. I think it works better if you do it as a group, like any sort of thing like this, like Keto Fitness Club. You're just so much more motivated in a group. And there are online, if you look in the back of the book, there are some online things that you can join. Some of them are for free, but obviously we'd hope you'd come and join anything that we're doing.
So we can commit now that we'll share with Keto Fitness Club so that you can keep people updated on what's available. And then we can give you our resources sheet that we have at the moment that talks about various groups that are in existence now that people can join.
Yeah. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat, and I saw that Sarah's come back to us and she said she's mentioned this before and got laughed at. You see, the trouble is that food addiction isn't an official diagnosis yet. We're all campaigning for that, so we hope that will happen. And I really believe it is a real thing. There's lots of research papers. If you're interested, Sarah, we can definitely kind of send you evidence. And she thinks that ADHD plays a part. Well, what's so interesting is that there's been lots of studies done, and people with food addiction do have attentional problems, and we don't know whether it's which way round it is in a sense. Is it people who have those kinds of brains who get more easily addicted, or is it the fact that we've been eating all this stuff and we've kind of messed up a bit with our brain circuitry that means that we have more problems with attention? And I think it's a bit of both, probably. I definitely have a bit of an attention. I don't have hyperactivity, but I do have a bit of an attention problem. So it's really interesting what you're saying there, Sarah. And I'm also thinking,
I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to jump in there just to add just a little bit of my own experience of food addiction, because I was actually had some tests for early onset dementia a number of years ago, and that was very much related to my diet. So that inability to concentrate, that inability to that loss of memory and capacity to get on with just daily life as a result of literally living on sugar. There is a big element of that for sure.
Of brain problems, and we're seeing that more and more in children as well, unfortunately. I keep wanting to go back to Sheila because I can feel her pain.
Go back to Sheila.
So how to hit it on the head, and you've said that you're in the house a lot on your own, and I'm wondering, Sheila, see, one of the things we really advise people, because so this eating of sweet things is an evolutionary thing. And actually, all of us here who have these appetite issues would have been survivors back in the day, because we'd have elbowed the rest of the guys out of the way and been kind of careering towards the food, because we was kind of had this heightened focus for the food. So we're cued by seeing stuff. That's why they spend so much on advertising food on the television and wherever we go. So if it's in the house, you're probably going to eat it, and particularly if you can see it. So we always advise people to really, and I'm sure Keto Fitness Club do the same, clear your cupboards out. If you must have it in the house because other people want it, make them keep it in their room, have a separate cupboard with a lock on, really make it inaccessible to yourself, because if you know it's there, it's the dopamine's calling, and you are going to struggle. And then the other bit, Sheila, is about spending a lot of time on your own. And I sympathize with that, because that was always my danger time as well. Home alone, nobody knows, and I'm going to go in the cupboards. Maybe thinking about, this is another thing we do as part of our courses, is that if we're trying to kind of withdraw from the food, we need to build our lives in other ways to give us that dopamine feel good factor in other ways that are sustainable, are going to keep us away from the food. So are there, if you're going to be in the house, are there things that you can do that you enjoy and are going to give you pleasure, or can you get out a bit more for walks or whatever it is? So we always encourage people to take up old hobbies, or take up a new hobby, or find something creative to do. So this is my wall of yarn is here up here by me, and I in the evening when I'm I finish what I need to do, I do some knitting or something like that, because you can't eat and knit. It's a kind of well, you could, but it would then end up all greasy and not good. So trying to find something else to do. So it's not just about the food, it is about other things as well. But really sympathize, Sheila, and maybe buy the book Fork in the Road and start with that. And you're right, it is easier in the spring because we can get out more, can't we, and go for walks and things in the evenings, which is really nice. And then Kath said, I don't think I'm eating enough, no problem having the sugar and carbs, prefer savoury. I've plateaued, going for 15, well done, 15 stone to 13 stone. Yeah, tricky one, don't know what to say really. Heidi probably comment more. The thing that we find is that most females in particular don't eat enough protein. That's something we find a lot. So we always encourage protein.
That's a really big thing that we talk about in Keto Fitness Club, is protein.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think the other thing maybe to mention there as well is, one thing that really helps is a bit of forward planning, to actually think about it. What is it that I want to eat? So if you're thinking I'm not eating enough, and you are involved in Keto Fitness Club, and you should be eating protein, because it's one of the absolutely basic building blocks of keeping you healthy and strong. So then plan what is the protein that you're going to eat every day. Have a plan for it. And very often, I think what we find is that and certainly I find it for myself, if I have a good plan in place and I've got enough protein and enough good fats in that plan, then I kind of squeeze away the room and capacity for either to be spending time thinking about food, which is also one of our issues. If we can spend less time thinking about food because it's already planned what we're going to have, then that's a benefit. But also I have less capacity to eat more, because I'm actually filling myself up with stuff that's going to nourish me. So anything you can do on planning is going to help.
That's a great point. Kathy says 3 for me with the extra thick double cream, but didn't buy any this week. Yes. Now, what we often find that, and nearly on every retreat we do, somebody's got a problem with cream. So for those of us with food addiction, dairy, particularly cream and cheese, can be a little bit problematic.
In January I done no dairy. Not no dairy, but really reduced the cream and the cheese intake, and I definitely felt a lot better for it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. exactly. It can dairy can be the hijacker, and we can find ourselves eating more. I mean, I could eat an absolute monster bucket of that yogurt, the Greek yogurt, or I'd find myself having like 20 decaf coffees a day, but just as an excuse to have the cream in it, really. So yeah, beware. So we need to food addiction folk need to be aware of dairy, and also nuts can derail us as well, particularly roasted and salted. They're like crack to some of us. So again, it's just about some people can have them and be fine, some people can have butter and be fine, but not other dairies.
But there's also the point, isn't there, that this can change over time. So we can start out thinking, oh, I have no problems. And Dan, your experience is maybe that. Maybe you were fine, and then as you cut out certain foods and you may be replaced with others, then you become eventually more aware that those foods might be problematic to you, that even though you thought they weren't before, you replace them. So it's unfortunate. I mean, the reality is, folks, that once we recognize that we do have some challenges in this area, then it probably is something that we're going to have to be working with for the rest of our lives. Not to say that we can't really enjoy food. Both Jen and I absolutely love our food and enjoy cooking and planning and preparing and so on. But we have to recognize that there are certain foods that are certain areas that are going to be problematic for us.
Best avoided. And it can change over time, over the 10 years or so that I've been low carb. It's definitely changed over time. Kerry, well done. It was definitely there before the diagnosis, but of type 2, but the diagnosis made me look at myself, and presumably what you're saying is that you don't experience those symptoms anymore, which is absolutely brilliant. Lisa says, favorite chocolate is milk tray. Oh yeah. Once opened, I'll eat the full top layer, even though I know I've had enough and start to feel sick. Yeah. They're best. I don't know what we're going to do with that box of chocolates. I used to say give them away, but then I used to think, well, who are you going to give them to? You don't want. Once you understand how bad sugar is, you don't like to give it to other people either, do you? I mean, most people know I don't have it now, so I don't get given it very often, and certainly never buy it. So, but yeah, it's difficult to know what to do with the chocolate. Food addiction was mentioned in my OU module, which I was surprised about. Oh, so Amanda, you'll have to tell us more which course you're doing. Definitely, Kerry definitely triggered early journey by the presence of certain foods, not even my favorites, had to be placed out of sight. Yeah, I think we know, don't we, that you have to, keeping busy. You're right, Dan.
Sorry, Sue normally would put these questions up, but she's having IT issues. So
that's fine. I'm enjoying reading them. Lisa says, doing the exercise classes. Yes, I should have said a bit more about that. Really, exercise really is like superb, and they do all the classes. I know you get that with KFC as well. With exercise, what you get is dopamine, is serotonin, is endorphins, all the feel good stuff. And even if you don't want to do it, make yourself do it. I never want to do it.
That was me this morning. Yeah, that was me this morning. I tried to go for a run, and it was windy and cold. I was like, and I was putting it off. And I was like, no, I need to go. And since I've done it and got out, I felt amazing when I finished. Really good.
It is a bit more challenging this time of year, but get in a habit of something that is something you enjoy. It could be dancing, or I don't know, any kind of thing. But do something you enjoy and do it on a regular basis. It really is massively important for mental health, not for weight loss. Don't be counting the calorie. Oh, I've burnt 400 so I can eat whatever. No, just do it for your head. And Jane said, this is a common one. So she got 4 out of 6 can experience sudden cravings, which is difficult to get past. Certainly you can have that early on. I don't know how far into this journey you are, Jane, but it does get easier over time. And if you're getting sudden cravings, try and sort of reflect on a couple of things. One is like, have you just seen an advert, or are you upset? Like, what's going on emotionally? Or you know, what did you eat the day before? So if I eat some dairy, the next day I'm just hungrier. It's just a fact, and I have more cravings. So that's partly why I avoid it. And the other thing to watch out for is alcohol, because it's psychoactive, and B, it can get you not necessarily the next day. I mean, it can get you the next day because you can feel a lot hungrier if you've drunk. But even if you just have one glass, maybe 2 days later, you can get cravings, and then you don't necessarily associate it with the alcohol, but it was the alcohol. So alcohol, obviously, it's another addictive substance. Even if we don't have a problem with alcohol, alcohol can cause cravings that can derail you. So Joan says she stopped buying the naughty stuff, but the craving can cause it to be irritable. Yeah, sure. So when they come on, you know, having a plan of what to do, you know, if it depends what the situation is, whether you can go a quick walk or you can sort of, you know, do a couple of star jumps or phone a friend or something just to get out of that. Right, and Matt, here's one for you, Heidi. How much protein is enough? From Amanda.
Yeah. Very good question. Lots of discussion about that. So I mean, generally we say that you should ideally aim for having something like between 1.5 and 2 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal body weight. But the big issue here is that people very often, probably not in this forum, but people very often mistake the amount of protein as being the weight of a steak, for example, or a piece of chicken or something like that, and it's not. So a piece of chicken, you know, if it's very very lean, it's not going to have more than 30% of it being protein. So if you're buying a chicken breast or eating a chicken breast of 100 grams, for example, you're not likely to be getting more than about 30 grams of protein, unless if there is fat or bone in it. And things like pork belly, one of my absolute favorites, that is very fatty, is probably going to be something less than 10% protein. So if you're aiming to get something like 60, 70 grams of protein, you're going to have to eat 3 or 4 or 5 times that amount in weight of the meat or the fish or that you're using as your protein source.
We do have a graphic on the information section of the website for protein per 100 grams of meat and fish in that. I don't think Sue will be able to get it up, will she?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, good that you can help people with that, because it's an important one. Yeah.
Kath, this is a really nice one from Kathy. I like this idea. I had to remove all sugar and sweet things from my house as my grandson had a problem with binge eating sweet things. Not having it in the house has changed his eating habits too, and he grabs a sausage or a couple of Scotch eggs instead. Isn't that good? Yeah, we eat what's around, don't we? And we're going to take the most palatable thing. So if that's a sausage, then that's great.
And that's good. That's a really good point here, because that you could do that can be part of your planning. You know, when you start to get to know your cravings, if you have some sort of a plan in place that says, I'm going to have a couple of cooked sausages that are ready, so that I can, when the cravings come, I've got something there that I can have. I know our tutor Bitten Johnson always said that she has her rule of saying, if I feel I'm hungry or peckish or something like that, and a hard-boiled egg isn't going to satisfy me, then I'm not hungry or peckish. Then I don't need anything. But having things that you really like, that's not going to be a chore to eat, is a very good idea to deal with those cravings.
There's quite a fine line between first as well, isn't there? So they say if you're hungry or got a craving, have a glass of water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really good one for giving yourself thinking time. So we we also try to recognize that there is that I think, Jen, you described it earlier, that watching our hand go and grab something, or opening the fridge door and, you know, like a zombie, just pulling things out and or in a cupboard, pulling things out and eating them, or even trying to, that sense, I don't know if anybody can recognize it, of quickly, I'm going to stuff this down quickly before I can stop myself. You know, that kind of thing. We some of us do. Sorry, I'm one of those people that would do that. And if we can do anything that can sort of elbow ourselves some room to stop before that automatic thought turns into an action, you know, some sort of breathing space between it. And your point there about a glass of water, a rule, I'm going to drink this glass of water the moment I sense I'm about to do something I'm going to regret. I'm going to drink it. Or I'm, you know, something else that gives you some thinking time to say, actually, no, I'm not going to do this now, because I'm working on my own recovery and my own control here.
Yeah, 100%.
Can I please? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go
I was
on.
just going to, can I jump in there and ask a question? Because I got a 21-year-old who's high functioning autism, and he has an addictive personality. Now, I can control what he eats in the house because we're a family now that's low carb. But when he goes out, he goes for the full sugar. He'll buy a packet of biscuits and eat the whole thing walking home. I don't know how to help him with that, because like I've surrounded us with good food. You know, my cupboard is plentiful of the right things. But how do you stop that impulse? How can I help him then with that? Because I've been laughed at myself when I've mentioned it to the GP about his sugar addiction. And he said, oh, look at him, he's thin, he's fine, don't worry about it. But I know the damage that is going to catch him up later on, because it's getting, I feel, the more he's going out and spending his bit of money, and if he doesn't have the money, he still gets those things by other means, which isn't good either. So I'm in a catch-22 there. So is there anything else I could be doing for him then, you know?
Does he notice any bad effects? Like, does he ever get...
He does say to me, there's something wrong with me, but I don't know what it is. And I'll say to him then, how many cans of pop have you had? Or, you know, and I've tried to do the visual 40 teaspoons of sugar, because with this younger ones in school, that visual is very powerful, but it doesn't seem to stick with my young person then, shall we say.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way I would go, is that if he's noticing ill effects when he does that, and you're making that link, you know, at least over time, you know, he might start to make that link himself and make some different choices.
It's not easy to say, but I will keep at it. I'm not giving up.
It's not easy, no, for sure it isn't. And that's the age where they want to kind of prove you wrong, isn't it, as well? So.
I'd also say, Tracy, because what he eats when he is at home is good, no sugar, low carb and everything when he's at home, at least he's got that. Think about 2-3 years ago, what he would have eaten at home and then what he would have eaten when he went out.
Definitely,
so
100%.
There is a big, so there is.
It's just, I just see, and I just think that sugar, that damage is going to catch him up, isn't it? And that's what I just think now. That's all, because he's young, and when we're not around, who's going to help him with that? You know, sorry to bring it to that level, but it is, isn't it? You know, as a parent and carer.
But Tracy, I wouldn't underestimate the potential influence that you will have by talking about the detrimental effects, you know, the proven detrimental effects on the brain of sugar and ultra processed food. So I think if you can, those kind of conversations are probably going to help him to. It's going to do something. So the more you can, it's unfortunate that you have a doctor who's sort of laughing at the concept, but there are people you can find, and maybe the resources that we give you, and Jen's book, and you know, there are little bits that maybe can help you to to keep that conversation going, so he picks up maybe some area of knowledge that will interest him as well.
Thank you, ladies.
No problem at all. I know we're supposed to be stopping, aren't we?
Yeah.
I just love all these comments. Yeah, so Dan says take up your time with other things, very, very important. And then Sarah, I'm worried here because you've said it sounds like I can't eat anything. That's not true. You can eat lots of meat and eggs and green vegetables and butter, and what else can she eat? Fish and all these good real foods. So please don't feel like you can't eat anything.
Sarah, on our I don't know if you've seen our website, Sarah. I can see that you're on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook, but our website, so ketofitnessclub.com, has got so much information on it, as well as over, I think it's over 300 recipes we've got now.
Over 500.
500. I was going to say 500 first of all, but I thought that's loads. But it is. It's over 500 recipes that we've got. So there is so much that you can eat. So go and have a look. Also, we run, sorry to jump in, but we also do a kick session, which is a free information session. It'll be fortnightly on Sunday nights. And so it'll be worth coming to one of them and learning more as well.
Yeah.
Can I just pick up on one more comment there about eating in secret, because I think that's one to share with other people that might experience that. That is also really, really common. So don't feel alone, Judith. That in fact, I've just had somebody that's joined one of my diabetic groups today who shared that in a private conversation towards the end, and it's something that going back to what Jen said right at the beginning, this is something that it's not your fault. It's the food, it's the biochemistry of what happens in the brain with these foods that compels you to keep eating them. And if you are in a relationship, for example, where it's disapproved that you're eating these foods, maybe you have a partner or a child or a parent who's disapproving of you eating because maybe you've got weight issues or whatever, then that is what happens. So it's a matter of trying to just recognize what you're doing, and still trying to get help to deal with it as an addiction issue. So finding yourself, trying to stay off those foods, finding yourself alternatives, but don't feel shame or guilt because of what you're doing. That is something that people do experience. It's just a matter of getting a plan in place and getting help to put it into practice.
Yeah,
yes, definitely.
Should we just answer Jane, and then we've done everybody? So Jane said, is too much protein bad for you, especially if you're on the bigger side or have kidney disease? That was the last one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, well, I mean, I think the first question I would ask is what's caused the kidney disease, and that tends to not have anything to do with eating too much protein. I think I think that's something that you have to talk to your GP about. But generally, it's not the protein that's the initial problem. You might need to be careful while you're getting your kidney disease under control. But Jen, what would you?
So the only thing that I would say is that obviously in the practice that the people who are doing low carb are obviously eating probably more protein than they did before they went low carb, and most of them are type 2 diabetics whose kidney function usually deteriorates slowly over time anyway. And the data show that even though those people are eating more protein, their kidney function is actually improving over time, which is the opposite of what you'd expect. So it's, not to say that, eating 4 kilograms of steak or something might not put a bit of strain on the old kidneys. But actually, there's not masses of evidence that eating more protein is not going to cause your kidney disease. It's so difficult to comment because we don't know what issues you might have personally. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, ladies. Is there any one final point that you would you'd like to give?
Oh, one final point.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there.
No, not at all. It's been fun. Well, David would always say, he's always going around telling people sugar is certain death.
That's direct and honest.
So, yeah, I mean, sugar's a poison. That's what insulin's for. Your bloodstream doesn't want to have sugar in it. Other than the tiny little 1 teaspoon that you need, and your own liver can make that. So the reason that insulin wants to get rid of sugar out of your bloodstream so fast is because it's a poison. And people with badly controlled diabetes are losing 100 days of life for every year that they have poorly controlled diabetes. So it's a third of your life expectancy. So, I think we all need to sort of hate sugar a bit more. I know we all love it, and that's because it's sweet and it does amazing things to our brain. But I think if we hate it, and if we hate the food manufacturers who've got us addicted to it, and get a bit more furious about the whole thing, and love our bodies enough to put the good stuff in that we need to fuel them, that would be my thought.
I've got to just echo what Kerry said. It's lovely to have met you in person at Festival. And I know when my husband and I met you at the first festival that we went to, it's been life-changing for our family because he's type 1 diabetic and he's now keto as well. And his health and everything, and the little Len you just saw, he's so into Keto Fitness Club, and so he's doing it little by little. And yeah, you bring so much to, you do such outstanding work, both of you and everybody else with PHC, and I wish we could do more, but we planting our seeds and watching them grow, as they say.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure, and that's lovely it's lovely to hear people like yourself, Tracy, whose lives are better, and that's why we do it. It's such a pleasure to hear people's stories, and fantastic.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
would you come on again if we invited you again?
Yes, of course.
We are following this up in the members group week Friday. We're having any other business, and some of our members have been very lucky and fortunate. They've said to come to your sugar addiction retreat, and they're going to talk about their experiences with members next week. I feel like this has only been the tip of the iceberg tonight. There's so much more that we could have. I've just sat here. Normally I'm known for talking and waffling and all the rest of it, but I've just really soaked it all in tonight. It's been fascinating, and so thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for coming. It's been really good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for listening, and we will post some bits everywhere. Hopefully Sue can close us live. Her computer's messing up, so we're hopefully going to be able to stop this live.
We're going.
Night